and welcome to another obscure Asian story. The recent US-China trade talks in Geneva brought a surprising breakthrough. Both countries agreed to reduce their tariffs for 90 days. This truce came sooner than many expected, as analysts had predicted a longer trade war. Although both sides had prepared for a drawn-out battle, they chose to step back earlier than anticipated. The conflict started heating up months ago when President Trump announced new tariffs on April 2nd. While he quickly paused most of these from many countries, China remained a target and responded with its own tariffs. The back and forth escalated rapidly. By April 11th, US tariffs on Chinese imports reached 145%, and China's tariffs on US goods hit 125%. Then, in Geneva, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng struck a deal to cut tariffs by 115% for 3 months. As a result, U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods dropped to 30%, while China's tariffs on American products fell to 10%. Stock markets reacted positively. After 2 days of talks, both countries issued a joint statement emphasizing the need for a healthy trade relationship and agreed to create a system to continue dialogue. China said it would pause or cancel some non-tariff restrictions on US goods but gave few details. Vice Premier He called the discussions honest and constructive, while Treasury Secretary Bessent stressed that neither side wants a complete economic split. Still, the US plans to keep limiting imports of critical items like semiconductors and medicines for national security reasons. President Trump hailed the deal as a great trade deal and took credit for a reset in US-China relations. Meanwhile, some Chinese commentators viewed it as a big win for China. This agreement is temporary, lasting 90 days, with the possibility of changes later. Bessent indicated tariffs on Chinese goods probably won't fall below 10%, with Trump's previous level of 34% acting as a ceiling. Some tariffs, like those on fentanyl-related products, may be eased. While Chinese goods still face a 30% tariff and some products like electric vehicles and steel carry extra duties, the US has reduced tariffs on smaller packages. For example, duties on Chinese goods under $800 dropped from 120% to 54%, and a planned increase on fees for online purchases was cancelled. China, in exchange, will suspend some non-tariff measures, such as restrictions on exporting rare minerals essential to US industries. However, the deal leaves several major US concerns unresolved, including China's large trade surplus and currencies practices. There's also a loophole. Since the US tariffs only target Chinese goods directly, China could route products through third countries to avoid the highest tariffs. This tactic might reduce the tariff revenue the US expects to collect. Who gave up more in the US-China trade standoff? Recent data shows China's economy slowed down a bit in April, with factory and retail growth dipping, but the numbers were still stronger than expected. The trade truce came after both sides felt the pressure. The US was seeing rising prices and empty shelves, while China worried about factory jobs. Both countries agreed to sharply cut tariffs for 19 days, easing tensions. China's exports stayed strong, partly because it shifted more trade towards Southeast Asia and Europe. Even if tariffs stick around, many experts think China's factories won't suffer as much as feared, and companies may delay, but not rush, moving productions out of China. Some economists believe the US had more to lose, since its economy depends more on Chinese goods, and a long trade war could have pushed it into recession. The quick trade truce also shows that both countries were feeling the pain. Chinese small businesses, meanwhile, aren't waiting around. They will keep exporting, open factories in other countries, and find new ways to cut costs. On the surface, it might look like China has the upper hand. Its leaders talk about eating bitterness, meaning the Chinese people are ready to handle tough times. The Chinese government can make decisions quickly and put pressure on American companies in China, knowing those companies will then push Washington to relax. But the reality is more complicated. Eating bitterness isn't what it used to be. China now has a large middle class that expects better living standards, not sacrifice. More than half the population is overweight, just like in the US, challenging the idea of national toughness. China's government isn't lightning fast. While authoritarian, its decision-making is slow and layered. Even President Xi Jinping seeks consensus among top officials. Ironically, when it comes to tariffs, it's the US under Trump that acts more like a one-man government, able to raise or lower tariffs almost at will. China does have ways to fight back in a trade war, but every option comes with a cost. For example, China can match US tariffs, like it recently did, raising them as high as 125%, but that could stop trade altogether. It could put pressure on American companies by starting investigations or bans, but this risks driving away foreign investors, which China needs for jobs and new technology. China might try to restrict exports of rare earth minerals, but that could simply push other countries to find alternatives. Devaluing its currency could make China products cheaper, but it will also increase inflation and encourage money to leave the country. Finally, China could sell off its US Treasury bonds to hurt the American economy, but that would actually make Chinese goods more expensive overseas, something China wants to avoid. Looking ahead, a lasting trade deal between the US and China may still be a long way off, if it happens at all. Past deals like the Phase 1 agreement in 2020 fell apart when China didn't meet its promises. Now the US might push for another big purchase agreement, but experts warn it could fail again. The last trade war cost the US about 245,000 jobs. Even with a temporary pause, tariffs remain much higher than before. Some experts predict US tariffs will settle around 15 to 20%, and China's could stay 5 times higher than they were a few years ago, a huge shift for global trade. While China still has options, most would hurt its own economy, so it might just wait and see if the US feels the pain first. Tariffs on Chinese goods, covering everything from smartphones to Christmas lights, are driving up prices in the US, hitting low-income families the hardest. Critics are calling this extra cost a Trump tax, and rising public pressure might eventually push Washington to compromise. So, who wins the trade war? In reality, no one does. Small businesses in both countries struggle. Shoppers pay more for everyday goods. US companies that need rare earth minerals might be left empty-handed unless China agrees to sell or Japan share its limited stock. If US bond rates keep rising, the whole American economy could suffer. That's why major trade wars are so rare. Everyone loses. In the US, tariffs act like a tax, raising prices and slowing spending. In China, exports are crucial for jobs and growth, so falling demand from America means layoffs and slower progress. Both economies are closely linked, making it hard to predict what happens next. Ultimately, politics may decide who gives in first. In the US, public opinion, media, and elections put pressure on leaders to act. In China, President Xi is unlikely to back down since giving in to the US would seem as a national embarrassment. President Trump has already accused China of breaking past promises and has hinted at new action. In the end, whichever country feels the most pressure to end the pain will likely be the first to back down. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time and thanks for watching!